So, guys, I got one of probably the OGs of the scouting community here, Ric Serritella. You see him from NFL Draft Bible. You probably saw him at the media day. He's doing a lot of different things. Way above my pay grade to have him on this show, but I'm really grateful that he came on.
Pat, what's happening, brother? That's a great intro. Hey, I'm fresh off the beach here, man. Just chopping it up. Looking forward to talking some football with you.
Always, man. I'm extremely grateful to have you come on because whenever there's a question, whenever there's the hierarchy, right, of who I go and talk to. I talk to Mr. Vogel, or I'm like, hey, what do I need to know about random guy from Eastern Kentucky? And then he'll say, he'll either give me the answer or he'll go up to you, or I'll just, depending on the day, I'm going on your feed and seeing what's up. So
Yeah.
the more football, the more leagues, the more players we need to know about, and this is the guy. And Rick, you were just at the Northeastern Conference Media Day. We were talking offline about it. I just think it's an immense privilege to have you on the show. And what do you got going on with the NFL Draft Bible right now, man? Like, are we full send? Are we just football upon football, or have you had 5 minutes to kind of relax and go down the seaside for 5 minutes?
Well, you'll be happy to know we did close down Seaside just last night. A lot of fun. But, we work hard, we play hard, and, there really is no summer vacation. You're right. For the first time in my lifetime, there's 52 weekends of live football around the clock calendar, right? It's all connected now. And I love that. And you're right. I like to think that I'm as connected as anyone to these guys. I watch them on whether it's the CFL, the USFL, the XFL. Uh, I know most, if not all, these players. I know a lot of their families. I know almost all of the coaches and the decision makers, and I feel very vested and interested. And so that's why, like, the NFL Draft Bible is we're just scratching the surface after 20 years. Like, we're just now scratching the surface of what I want it to become. We've stepped away from Sports Illustrated, which I'm ecstatic about because Draft Bible's always been independent, and we're not going to let corporate America hold us down anymore. We're going to take the brand global. I'm talking to people around the world about bringing the Draft Bible type of coverage to every continent on the planet. So, like, that's where I see the Draft Bible heading. We're kind of morphing into this all access football. And so there's going to be a lot of things coming down the wire. I'm excited about it. We're still going to have our draft coverage. I got the allaccessfootball.com newsletter, which is free. You can sign up. You can get all this great content. All of our draft rankings are still available. But yeah, we're going to be unfiltered now. No more red tape. No more corporate America. We gave them the double middle finger salute. And that's just real talk. And so I'm happy to be back, independent, doing my thing. We got a great partnership with the grid camps. I was fortunate enough, to travel 3 years on the road with Hub Football, with the ANC combines, all throughout the pandemic. Like, we never stopped that whole time. And now they're all, it's all paying off. All that hard work that these players did to stay in shape, a lot of them paid out of their own pocket, worked several jobs, supported their family. And let's be honest, they're not making boku bucks in the USFL or XFL, but they're hanging on to that dream and they're keeping it alive. And look no further than Cavante Turpin. And as long as there's those stories out there, there's going to be a need for all these leagues. And I love to say, and I'll say one other thing. We have quite the following on Twitter, and the Twitterverse is a funny place, Pat, as you know. And I find great amusement on my timeline when I'm scrolling, and it's one post about USFL and XFL ratings are so terrible, 600,000, 700,000. How can they sustain? And then the next post is the CFL bragging how they just did like 400,000, 500,000 viewers. So it's very, very perception deception, I like to call it. I think it is sustainable. I think it does serve a purpose. And I do think that there is potential, like you're seeing now, the NFL starting to buy in a little bit to some of these XFL partnerships and the USFL, even what they're doing with the player allocation now, where each team will be allocated to 4 NFL teams and they get to kind of scout those rosters, like the training camp will be allocated. And so, I love it all. Can't get enough. Did I answer the question? I don't even
Just
know.
just a little bit. I this just popped into my head, and you've been doing this for 20 plus years. Have you seen something going back and being a Northeast guy coming from like XFL 1.0 to even the UFL with the Hartford Colonials and the New York Sentinels to the Fall Experimental Football League? Have those leagues kind of perfected like the alternative side of your scouting and kind of figuring it out? Because you love football. I know you had a beat on those leagues just for a little bit. Like we talk about spring football and all that goofy stuff, but this pretty much been going strong since 2000, 2009. If you really want to get giddy about the spring league and Ryan Woods's experiments and whatnot as well. So has that kind of just been like fine tuning the alt side of this as far as your scouting? Because there's all the bowls you went to and all that great stuff, but thinking back on it, we haven't really stopped with spring football or an alternative league in the outdoor space outside of Canada and, obviously all these arena leagues that pop up every 15 minutes.
Yeah. So, and I'll say, like, I've always been infatuated by alternate football. Like, I go back to the World League, Kurt Warner, JT O'Sullivan, Jake Delhomme, those kind of stories always intrigued me. And so, to your point, I do think that, yes, there has been some trial and error kind of worked out. I'll say, like, the people who are responsible for scouting don't want to hear this and don't like me saying this, but the scouting part is easy. I think it's everything else that's the hard part. You're going to have the Alex Magoo's by default. There's so many talented players not getting an opportunity that they just need a chance, a platform, and those stories will matriculate, right? But there's enough talent as we're seeing. Like our guy Emery Hunt just posted Devin Ross playing in the European League of Football. And like that always bewildered me why Devin Ross isn't in the NFL. And I saw several hundred, if not over 1,000 players pass through the hub. Devin Ross had elite separation skills, elite, and very similar to Gregory Dortch, who you saw go on a tear down the stretch of the season. And he will be the best, most consistent wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals, Gregory Dortch. I mean, Devin Ross is a guy, like, again, do whatever it takes. We hear about the conditions over there. We see what's happening. He don't give a shit. Yo, I want to play football because he knows, and I know he can play at the top level of the best. How about I was watching Terry Godwin make plays the other day uh, on the CFL. Dane Evans. I said, man, Dane Evans, him and his father, what a great family. One of the most first class individuals I've ever come across. And I remember it so vividly, like yesterday. And I went back, man, that was 7 years ago. And now he's starting to get some shine 7 years later, right? Because he loves the game. And, you know, there's a lot of players like that. And if they're talented enough to keep it going, man, that's the stories, that's the reputation and the backbone that Draft Bible was built on. I'm not telling you the top 100 prospects, anybody can do that. And we're telling you the guys, like here's another thing that the scouts don't like me saying, but it's true. Like I've always admired the CFL scouts more than the NFL because to me, that's a unique eye because you are identifying now not NFL talent. You're identifying guys that don't check off all the boxes, that might fall through the cracks, that don't meet the NFL requirements. It's a different type of scouting, and it's harder than NFL scouting. And I respect the heck out of the CFL scouts because they've got a plan when they're negging guys 4, 5 years down the road sometimes, which is fascinating. And so that's a tough job. I think that's a tough job. And then you've got to recruit them, right? Because there's a lot of Hollywood. You don't see the P5 players of the world have great success up north. I think it's the smaller school guys or the mid-major guys that work out on a more consistent basis, because I hear it all the time. These guys, they come up, they think they're too good. They don't realize CFL starters, the ones very comparable to the NFL. So they go up, they get their ass kicked, and they go home. And, you hear that story too often. So it takes a unique eye, it takes a unique skill set. At the end of the day, player evaluation is more people evaluation. The longer I do this, it's, really, and then once you get comfortable with your ability to identify, you realize more and more it's just more about what's in here and in here. And that's why I love going, like you mentioned the media days, and we were talking, and you said, how was it? I said, man, it felt so good to be back in person to make that connection, right? Like now I could pick up any coach in that conference and call them and find out whatever I want to know, right? And every player that stepped through, not all of them are going to be NFL prospects, but many of them are going to wind up in some of these leagues we're talking about. And like, I'm going to tell you, Owen Glasgow from Long Island, like, who's talking about that young man? What a talent. 6'5", 255, lines up at tight end, H-back, fullback. I mean, this guy's a touchdown machine. Look out, man. I love it.
It's funny you mentioned Dane Evans, because I remember when he was at the Eagles, and he was battling with Joe Callahan. I think Joe Callahan went to
Delaware.
Wesley College. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was like, I don't know who this Evans, because at first I saw Evans and I was thinking Jared Evans from Baugh Tech. Kind of dating ourselves a little bit, but I was like, this Dane Evans guy isn't bad. And then he goes up to Canada. Callahan touches the XFL with Team 9, and like you said, to see him gain that opportunity. And I love that you mentioned Devin Ross, because I feel like Ross kind of, he went to the XFL and then, didn't work out with the Brahmas, came back to the USFL, got hurt. And that was a guy who I think in 2022 was one of the more underrated receivers, kind of, I don't want to say distance himself from Johnny Dixon, Jonathan Adams, but kind of did all the gritty work to where those guys are kind of, I don't want to use one trick pony, but you see the body types, you see their legacy. Devin Ross is a guy that's going to be more your typical wide receiver 5, could translate onto the special teams, play those extra reps versus like, Jonathan Adams hasn't played on a kickoff since probably high school, where he probably was the kicker because he's always been the most athletic guy type thing. And that's something I
No,
think gets talked about a lot is these less sexy names of these leagues can do more, which translates them better to an NFL roster, because what do you got to do as an NFL player? You got to play kick return. You got to play kickoff.
no, it stands true. Like the more you can do, the more valuable you are, and that'll never change. What has changed though, like going back to Dane Evans, he came out now, what, 7 I had him at the College Gridiron Showcase when I was the director there. That was like 8 years ago. And so, like 8 years ago, there was a very big stigma around short quarterbacks. And Dane was right there, like 6 foot on his tippy toes. And he wasn't an elite prospect. So, yeah, I think he got labeled a little bit. And like Mason Fine is another guy we saw make his debut, and we had him out at the NFLPA Bowl, and he's a great looking player. I think once he gets his feet wet a little bit, he'll be just fine. But it's cool to see. I think for the first time, is it true? Like two Canadian born quarterbacks faced off against each other, which is
It's
hard to believe. Yeah,
it's pretty nuts to hear that, a Canadian league having
yeah.
that first time of the legacy. But I mean, I love what you're saying though, and I think it's starting to get echoed a lot. But as far as with these leagues, like when they go to these bowls, I was talking to Jimmy Williams from the Hula Bowl, and they have like a 99% success rate of guys go. It was something outrageous. I don't remember the actual number, but it's like with all these opportunities coming on, it's just more football, the better. But it's also putting these spotlights on these smaller colleges. And I guess with the NIL, you factor that in. You send one guy to the NFL or the XFL, he becomes a star there. It puts that spotlight on your LIU. It's going to put the spotlight on Stonehill and go down the list of schools we don't talk about, especially when, like, remember Hofstra when Marcus
Yes, I
Colston
do.
came out and Wayne Corbett, and,
Absolutely.
go down,
Sure.
Willie Colon, all these Hofstra guys, Kyle Arrington, and I miss that program a lot. But
Yeah.
it puts the spotlight on this, and I think guys like you or where a guy like me, I'm striving to get to that point where like I can rattle off Wagner College's like kickers and all that stuff, and like these guys.
Yeah, I know. I definitely know way too many names. To your point about college football, my personal belief is we're not done with the volcanic explosion that is the college football landscape, because I can't think of an era that has more radically changed any sport at any time in any point in history. I mean, this thing has gone from college football to pro sports very quickly. NIL, the transfer portal, free agent, essentially free agency, and now you're going to get eventually a super PAC conference, right? Because the SEC and the Big Ten, right? They're going to figure out, like, the ACC. They're going to give the NCAA the double middle finger salute, like I did the SI, right? And they're going to say, "What do we need you for?" Right? What do we need you for? Oh, by the way, these players don't go to school. I'm not knocking it. I'm not criticizing it, but these are satellite teams that happen to practice on campus. These guys aren't going to school. They're not going to classes. So let's stop it. Like, amateurism in college football is over. You are going to see a super PAC of the haves, and then you're going to have everybody else who are the have nots. And that's where I think the college football landscape is going. I don't know if it's good or bad. And I don't know, like, if this had anything to do with your question, Pat, but I just wanted to get that out there, because where the college football landscape is I think they opened a can of worms that was unintended with the combination of the NIL and the transfer. Heck, I see players now. I mean, we used to red flag them if there was a double transfer player. We said, what's the story? I see guys do that in one season now. Right? I mean, you got triple transfers in 1 year. Guys going to 3 different schools. And that is something that has really thrown a monkey wrench. Our summer scouting process, the database entry, which I still am heavily involved with because many people don't want to do it. That's what separates people in this business is the desire and want to. You got to have the sickness. But tracking the super senior, I mean, there's 7-8 year seniors, which is crazy. And the transfers, trying to keep up with these guys. Rarely now, you expect the guy to transfer when I'm doing the write up. Where did he start off? Where did he come from? Now, if he stays at the school, you're like, whoa, what's wrong with that kid? It's just changed, man. It's scary how much college football has changed. I don't think people are really aware of, like, the avalanche or dominoes that are about to fall in college football, specifically the NCAA.
Well, it's rare if he stays at that one school and he's coming out at 21. Like the Battlehawks drafted a guy named Johnny Buchanan out of Delaware, and I think he's only 21, 22 years old. And you flip it to the other side. It's like I saw Colby Reeder get picked up, and I think he started at Delaware, then went to Iowa State, and now it's like you're like, oh, NFL brother, Delaware guy, and they're churning out linebackers like it's cool, and I'm like, this dude's 26 years old, man. It's like, it's
27. Yeah.
no, my point exactly, and it's like, it's football is a very violent sport, and I know conditioning and the way they do training, and now they're doing yoga with the foam rollers, which is all great. But it's like, you sign this guy to a 1 year or a rookie contract, and it's 4 years, 3 years, and it's like, what's next? At 30 years old, and so on like one side, I'm pretty supportive of all these guys, air quote, getting their money, because I always go back to Jason White from Oklahoma, and I'm like, yo, this guy was in school for 5 or 6 years, got
Yeah.
hurt, never matriculated to the NFL, and I think he owns businesses in Oklahoma. Great, a guy like that can get a couple $1 million, and for the money he's brought in. But on the flip side, I'm like, I mean, what's like going on in the what's going to happen in the NFL? Like, are we, like what's going to happen in the XFL? Like, are these going to just all affect the football ecosystem? Because that's something I think about sometimes. And another fear I have is we might have these XFLs and USFLs. Our leagues might be, these guys are just too. I don't want to say too old, but they're like, who in 2026 and 2027, like who are we going to be watching in these leagues? Because you're like, could I just stay at Colorado till I'm 25 and make 600 grand? I don't have the answers to any of this, and I don't know if people are even asking that question right now.
Well, I think, a lot of layers to that onion. I think one, you're always going to have a fresh draft pool of players to refresh. I think two, like to your point, yeah, the average NFL career, like we know who the superstars are, the average fan, I'm saying. The average career is over 25 years old. You're over with. The average career now is like 2.5 years. So, but I will say, like, there's going to be a need, like, for the Woody Bradhams of the world, right? Who just re-upped. He's going to play again in one of the USFL, I think. Woody Brandon, and we had him out at the NFLPA Bowl, and good player. Really, known more for his blocking. He worked himself into a very competent, capable pass catcher. Now he's not going to light the world on fire, but he's not going to hurt you either, right? He's kind of like a Jake Ferguson type of player, but we had him maybe 4 years ago at the NFLPA Bowl. I don't even know. He might have got a couple cups of coffee, but the chances are his NFL window is probably shut. But he loves the game, so like the leagues are going to have needs for guys like that, and I think to some point, like I do think the XFL has done a better job with connecting the fan base, but like if you're going to build fandom, fandomness or fans and connect, like they've got to feel attached to the team. And that's where I think the USFL needs to figure out this hub situation and how they're playing it and where they're playing it. Like, there's a lot of good, but there's still a lot of room for improvement, right? Like I don't want to see New Orleans playing a home game in Detroit with 87 people in the stands. We got to figure out how to be better, right? Going back to what I said earlier, the scouting part is easy. Okay. I got lists and databases for days. I mean, Pat, I could start my own league. But can I sell my own merchandise? Can I sell those tickets? Can I get fannies in the seats? Right? Now, like the XFL, they didn't want to buy all these jerseys and get stuck with the inventory. So they did one jersey, 54. Who the heck wants a 54 jersey? So now you've just eliminated a whole revenue stream. And I'll say, like, I bought a bunch of XFL hats. I bought a bunch of USFL hats from both online stores. I could have probably got them for free and called in some favors, but I bought them. And like, yo, XFL, my hats came all damaged. The brims are all crooked. At least USFL packaged it so like it wouldn't get crushed in translation. So like those are the things. Like if I'm a fan and I order this $50 hat and it comes all crunched up, I can't even use it. Like that's a bad look. Number 50, like yo, they almost took themselves a little bit too seriously, right? They were all the way over here. This is the XFL, Vince McMahon. So now, like, hey, we want to be so buttoned up and analytical. Like, nah, bro, bring back He Hate Me. Like, bring back the originality. Like, that got fans excited, right? Like, that creativity. You know how many jerseys you would sell if the XFL brought back the player's ability to write whatever name they want to wear? Like, that to me is a no-brainer revenue stream. But they're not doing that. And so like they're that's the thing is like all these other moving parts. The Canadian Football League, remember during the COVID, they almost folded because they rely on the gates, the concessions, the ticket sales, all the merchandise that they sell. They're only getting 200 grand from CBS Sports Network. That's a joke. That's a joke. To your point, some of these FCS deals generate more money payouts from ESPN than Canadian Football League. So they have to have fannies in the seats. And I think the XFL has done a much better job than the USFL, but they both have to figure out how to do a better job and choose better markets. Like I just saw XFL trademarked for the LA Wildcats. Why? Why do you think nobody even cares about the Chargers and Rams? You think they're going to care about another team in LA? Like, and I love having a team in Jersey, but like, nobody cares. You know why? They got the Giants. They got the Jets. Guess what? There's a lot of like
Well,
build.
they got the
Yeah,
Yankees, the Mets, the
yeah, and you got so many pro
NYFC.
teams. Like every pro league has multiple New York, New Jersey teams. Like there's 2 teams, 3 teams in baseball, 2 teams. It's like nobody's gonna watch this stuff in New Jersey, the New Jersey Generals. It's just reality. So like they gotta like do a self reflection in the mirror. I'm sure I'll be getting phone calls after this interview, but they know how to find me.
Yeah, I've been critical. I don't think now you can get rid of New Jersey. I think you need to put them in New Jersey to okay, this didn't work, and because I do think by this time you're kind of grinding on it. I'd like to see them go to New Jersey, but I've been to a Sentinels game when they were at Stewart Field or Stewart Stadium. Like, I mean, it was a pretty bleak, fan.
No, the XFL put a team in Jersey a couple years back. I
Yeah,
told them, don't do it.
yeah,
I said, if you're going to do it, like put it at the Metro Stars, have a soccer stadium in Harrison, that it would have looked at least a lot more intimate and not ideal. But I said, you're going to play in Giants Stadium with 1,000 people. I said, it's going to look stupid. Why are you doing that? But
yeah. I like. I'm an East Coast guy. I'm originally from New York. Like, I don't. I we have too much stuff going on. Like, our teams are even with the Mets and Yankees, they're still pretty
there's just too
competitive.
many other options for people to spend their hard earned money on.
Yeah,
And that's just reality, right? Like I love the Generals. I don't want to see them leave, but they're just not sustainable if they're going to be based in New Jersey. It'll never work. I
yeah.
know that, right?
I mean, anyone, and you have the track record with the New York. Excuse me, what were we? The New York Hitmen didn't do too well. Like the Sentinels, the Brooklyn Black Tips or the Brooklyn Bolts and whatnot, and it's just 2020's Guardians. Like I don't know. I think Florida is always a good move. I'm not, maybe with this LA Wildcats, we should look less on the LA and more of the Wildcats. Maybe that's a move. I don't know. I think someone should go to Salt Lake. I've been to Utah a couple times. There's good football players out there as well as far as like the locals, and you could pick up your Utah guys, your Utah State guys, and there's people who are from Utah that I think would be involved in it that have
Very passionate, very
yeah.
passionate. In fact, I shouldn't even say this. I'm not supposed to. Tom Goodhines, don't get mad at me, but we're coming to Salt Lake City, the grid camps, that is. And I also probably shouldn't say this, but Ty Detmer is going to be heading up the coaching staff out there, and I'm excited to get out. I haven't been out to Salt Lake since the Sundance Film Festival. Now we're going to sidetrack, Pat. I used to work Weekend Vibe TV show. They sent me out on assignment to Salt Lake City to go interview Snoop Dogg, and so he was about 3 hours late to the interview. Rolled up, said, "I'll be right back." About 5 minutes later, his whole tent lit up in smoke. About another hour later, he came out ready for the interview, and then he hooked me up with free concert tickets for my for my patients. So it all came out in the wash. But that's my Salt Lake sidetrack story, and I'm looking forward to getting out there right after Philadelphia. We're gonna head out to Salt Lake City. It's gonna be cool, man.
I mean, to sidetrack off that, like the Stallions, I felt like had a good vibe going as well, man.
Yeah,
Salt Lake, I'm not going to put it up there in the tier of football talent. In my mind, it's California, Texas, Georgia, Florida, and then
no, there's
St.
some good
Louis.
talent there. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
some good
but like,
talent out there.
don't sleep on these Utah kids, man.
Yeah,
So with these grid camps going everywhere, like you're obviously very involved with that. You're really involved with the hub.
yeah,
Is It's kind of morphed into that. That's the next step of these independent scouting and whatnot. Is what we're seeing from you.
yeah. So I hooked up with the hub right from the start, and Don Yee had you know it's funny because all these hubs, like these USFL hubs and like the fan controlled football hub, it was actually like Don had this Pac Pro Pacific Pro football league he was trying to build. If you remember, it didn't quite come to fruition. I think he was ahead of his time. Had he done that when COVID hit, I think it would have been a smashing success. But instead, he realized the need as an agent. He could not get his players into the NFL facilities because, as you know, during the COVID, I mean, we all heard the nightmare stories. The player flew out. He was up at the hotel. Next thing you know, he never made it inside the facility. Teams just didn't want to mess with the outside players. So we said, hey, we'll bring the players to us. We'll film them. We'll evaluate them. We'll distribute it to the teams ourselves. And we did a great job. I mean, I think it was like 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 players signed to NFL, CFL, or USFL and or XFL contract at the time. And so these were just players hanging out on the couch. And Don identified a need. Now, you know, all of his camps were LA or San Diego based because that's where Don lives, and he gets to make those decisions. But I think that we had a good run. Um, the eventual end goal did not really come to fruition like Don thought it would, because I think there was another tier or layer. And so Tom Goodhines, who was the senior vice president of Hub Football, right? So uh, let's be honest, that Don idea, Don money, Tom executes, right? Like he's the one that kind of ran the whole show. And I just recently did an interview with John Peterson of the USFL, and I echo his sentiments thoroughly that like I've been to hundreds, if not thousands, of pro day workouts and camps and free agent showcases, and like the Hub Football, hands down, is the most organized because of Tom's dedication to detail. Now he spent, I think, 20 years running the Arena Football League, so he has the know-how. Obviously, they did a lot of that at the arena level. He worked with Don for like 6 years now because they were trying to create the Pac Pro League. Then they executed on the hub. They had a great 3-year run. But Tom understands the need and desire for these players to be showcased. Now, there's a lot of ways to be seen these days. I know XFL is doing a combine, USFL has showcases, but I think what the grid camps, or formerly the hub, it's essentially the same thing because Tom has taken the concept. It's an OTA style workout. We're going to measure you. I think we're going to do some testing at these. And the fact of the matter is, like, we were talking off the air, like, you're only as valuable as your network in this business. Well, that goes true for the players. So when you're out there and you're talking to myself and you're talking to Tom, or you're getting coached up by John D. Filippo, and our good friend Tony Rassiopi will be coaching out there. We'll have, USFL scouts will be hanging out. You never know where your next job opportunity is going to come from. And so, like, if you come and show out, believe me, like, you're going to get noticed, you're going to get talked about, you're going to get referred, and you're going to get a job. Like and I don't even want to say which coaches and who they're working for, but some of our coaching staff at the hub, now the grid, like they're like gophers for some of these NFL GMs. So like they report back to their buddies and say who they saw. And so like, we even dabbled a little bit with the transfer portal. We did a transfer portal showcase. The one kid got the scholarship to Texas, P5, man. And so, like, there's a big need for these showcases, but I think the value is like we film you, we distribute the film, we evaluate you, we distribute the evaluations, and then like we make it so accessible and easy for the teams to contact the players. Like they get a QR code flip card, they scan it, they get all the information, background reports, verified measurements, their agent, their contact, the player cell, the play. Like it can't be any easier for the teams to find you if they like you. And so it's a method that works. I'm happy to be involved with it, man. It's a very, very tedious job screening the players because not everybody's invited. It's an invite only process. We're not just out here going through the motions, right? We're looking for talent. We're trying to place guys, and I think that's why we've had, I believe, success signing these guys to contracts.
Well, I think it's extremely crucial because like what something I always echo the players a lot is you talked about the connections and they're not hard to find. You can literally go on the Wikipedia page. Okay, X coach is going to be there. He was a scout with the Browns in '95. Who who was who's a GM for X team in the XFL or USFL? Like sometimes because I've talked to two or three players, I was like, I've recommended the hub camps. I've recommended, now the grid camps, and I've recommended the showcase for the XFL, and I'm like, hey man, like this is, it's you're not always interviewing to go play with the Battlehawks or something like that. You're interviewing to go play for, I guess, 25 other, Canadian USFL, XFL teams. And, it's the formula is proven. Like I remember in 22 when I was doing my draft recap for Michigan, it just seemed like everyone had a hub connection. And then a couple of those signings, like when guys didn't report, got hurt, it just seemed like there was such an initial, like, I don't know what your numbers are as far as success
No,
rate.
well, the first USFL draft, thank you, Pat, was 85 of the 285 players came through the hub. So
Yeah.
like a third of the initial
Yeah.
USFL draft were all Hub football alumni, and I think it was very similar with the XFL draft as well. So yes,
It just seemed like I know the hub is no longer with us, but essentially, we've evolved in the grid and whatnot, if you want to call it that. But it's just, to me, I feel like too many of these players, all you see on Twitter all the time, all I need is a shot. Hey
hmm
man, I you you really think you're that good? I will pay for your plane ticket to go to Salt Lake, go throw in front of Ty Detmer, and if you make it, I'm sure you'll be able to pay me back. Like that's kind of
yeah,
I've extended that offer to a couple players. Like, like, hey man, I'll pay for your plane ticket to go out there if you think you're that good. And then, there's a lot of being left on red, because you essentially, and I hate to say this, it's like you're calling them out on their nonsense. Like it's a little bit, it's like, hey man, you think you're that good? I will comp your ticket. Like I want to see some of these guys succeed. And it's just like,
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like sometimes there's a lot of poo pooing of NFL or bust, and I'm like, hey man, like there's proven formulas of these other leagues giving people opportunity, and it starts at a couple of these camps.
no, and I think I will say like we had a hard time when Hub started. I mean, it was a difficult to get over the skepticism of the agent and the player community, right? Because it was new. And I think the problem is that unfortunately, there's a lot of money grab workouts in this business. And players have been burned by that too. And those experiences get talked about more than the positive experiences. Like, I think in 20 camps, we had one complaint. A player complained about the surface he was slipping. And he obviously didn't read the memo because we notified the players about the field conditions and to wear the appropriate turf shoes. But we had one complaint in 20 events. And, you don't hear about that because it's like a referee. You're supposed to be good. You did your job. But I think like these money grab events, which they are out there, right? And they get talked about. And the players say, oh, are these guys really legitimate? I think they've got to do the homework. Like if you want to play professional football and you're on the street, a lot of their agents, let's be honest, have given up on them or have other clients that they're more interested in. So you've got to do the homework. You've got to invest in yourself. You've got to put in the time to make the smart decision. But like I think that's what separates again, like grid or even ANC Combine, who I worked with, like they're legitimately represented by individuals who have, I lean on my reputation, right? Like Tom Goodhines can lean on his reputation. You can go look up John D. Filippo or Tony Racioppi and find out what those guys are about. And I think it's up to the players to do the homework, but you're right. Like some of them are just NFL or nothing. And some of them like find out real quick. Maybe you don't love the game like you thought you did, but like Devin Ross is over there playing in Europe right now. What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes I don't want to say it's not about always putting the work in the gym or in the film room. It's about doing some actual cognitive research. And some people think they're working hard, but unfortunately, there are guys that are not only doing everything you're doing, but they're also figuring out the mental aspect and the air quote business side of the aspect. And I mean, that's why we'll probably see Devin Ross in 2024 playing somewhere, if not the end of 23 with a
Mm-hmm.
team. So,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, for every Devin Ross that there's out there, there's a lot of people we don't even talk about anymore who have just kind of dissipated after a training camp or two. So, Rick, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Where can people find you? I appreciate you coming on. I'm sure if anyone's watching this, they're probably following you, and if they're not, they're just a little bit jacked up, in my opinion. But where can people find you all over the universe right now?
Well, right now for the next week, you might be able to find me on the Good Jersey Store Lavalette. I wanted to represent the first responders here and give a quick shout out to the good old fire department, the first aid squad, the police department. Just about every day in the summer, I see the rescue squad shoot up rescuing people. It's a daily occurrence here at the Jersey Shore. It's scary. I mean, I joke we closed down the seaside boardwalk, but in reality, like they were searching for bodies in the water with the helicopters all night long. The police were out there trying to find people who were drowning. So you could find me up on the beach. I'll be doing my janky dad jog on the boardwalk early mornings, so you could catch me up there. But no, appreciate the time. Allaccessfootball.com is the website. Going to be sending out my newsletter throughout the year, giving you all the draft updates, giving you all the alternative football updates. I'm sure I'll be chopping it up with Pat on the Markcast. So yeah, be on the lookout for us. The YouTube channel, All Access Football, is going to have a lot of great content, and the Twitterverse, man, we're very easily found. So thank you so much. Love talking football with you, Pat, and can't wait to do it again, brother. Buckle up.
Can't wait. 52 weeks, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. All of links, Rick's links will be in the description. Until then, guys, appreciate everyone tuning in.